17 U.S.C. 107 federal law allows citizens to use copyrighted media for fair use. That is criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody.
Uma, Yahweh, Weaputu Oyeveka, Weanusa Misameka, arise of you, O Yahweh. Uma, let your enemies be scattered, and let those that hate thee flee from before thee. Let all of Yasharah, Yisrael, who love, worship, and praise Yahweh, give him thanks by saying hallelujah.
Shalom everyone, my name is Rachel and welcome to Into All Truth, and thank you for those who are still purchasing calendars and the Hebrew lifestyle book, Chaya, Eat, Life, and Fast. And may the Ruach HaKodesh lead you into all truth and show you things to come. And may the Spirit of Yahuwah rest upon you as you watch this video on Russia, the Great Bear of the Four Carpenters. Ammon.
Stolen identity, a lock without a key. We've been the butt of the joke throughout history.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. We're going to have a little bit of a sound issue on this. I'm having issues with my computer, so I'll try to mask it with some music if that's what you hear, some weird clicking sounds, but I'm working on it. So the ones who will repatriate Israel to the land, and they're the same ones who scattered Israel to the four corners of the earth. So today we are featuring Russia, that's Rus, and Japheth. And so we'll just do a general study on who the four carpenters are, what they represent, and then we will focus in on Russia, Gog, and Magog. The reason why I wanted to do this video is because I've explored these scriptures on the invasion of the Promised Land and how it goes about. And there's a prophecy of how it takes place. In addition to that, there's also the prophecy of four carpenters repatriating Israel to their land. All right, so the four carpenters are described as four artificers, okay? Four artificers. And so it's going to be by prophecy and scripture that we determine who these people are. So the four carpenters, Zechariah 2. And I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, four horns. And I said to the angel that spoke with me, what are these, my Lord? And he said to me, these are the horns that have scattered Judah and Israel and Jerusalem. And the Lord showed me four artificers. And I said, what are these coming to do? And he said, these are the horns that scattered Judah, and they broke Israel into pieces, and none of them lifted up his head. And these are come forth to sharpen them for their hands, even the four horns, the nations that lifted up the horn against the land of Yahuwah to scatter it. And I lifted up my eyes and I looked, and behold, a man in his hand with a measuring line. And I said to him, whither goest thou? And he said to me, to measure Jerusalem, to see what is the breadth of it, and what is the length of it. And behold, the angel that spoke with me stood by, and another angel went forth to meet him, and spoke to him, saying, run and speak to that man, saying, Jerusalem shall be fully inhabited by the reason of the abundance of men and cattle in the midst of her.
And I will be to her, saith Yahuwah, a wall of fire round about, and I will be for a glory in the midst of her. Hallelujah. So you guys, that is the promise of the end of the scattering, the final regathering. But we should take a look at this because these are the translations, two different translations. And I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, 4 horns. And I said to the angel that spoke with me, what are these things, my Lord? And he said to me, these are the horns that have scattered Judah and Israel and Jerusalem. And Elohim showed me 4 artificers. And I said, what are these coming to do? And he said, these are the horns that scattered Judah, and they broke Israel in pieces. And none of them lifted up his head. And these are come forth to sharpen them for their hands, even the 4 horns, the nations that lifted up the horn against the land of Yahuwah to scatter it. Okay, so that is the Septuagint version. And down here is the KJV version. Then I said, what come these to do? And he spake, saying, these are the horns which have scattered Judah, so that no man did lift up his head. But these are come to fray them, to cast out the horns of the Gentiles, which have lifted up their horn over the land of Judah to scatter it. So this is King James, and it's a Masoretic text translated by the Ashkenazis. So it's very clear here when we read that it says, these are the horns that scattered Judah, and they broke Israel into pieces, and none of them lifted up their head or had any sympathy. And these are come forth to sharpen them for their hands, even the 4 horns, the nations that lifted up the horn against the land of Yahuwah to scatter it. So the same people who scattered and lifted up their horns against Israel are the same ones coming to try to sharpen Israel for their purpose. Now it says in this one, they've come to cast out the Gentiles, which lifted up their horn over the land of Judah to scatter it. But in this one, it's saying that these are the very same ones who scattered it. And I think the Septuagint is right, and we're going to see that that's true. Now, I want to focus on the term artificer. An artificer is a skilled worker, a craftsperson, one that contrives, devises, or constructs something, a deceptive or devious person. So we often hear that these are the 4 carpenters. Proper word is artificers. Artificers. And so this is who they are. Africa, Iran, Russia, and China. So we already talked about the Medo-Persians, and we talked about Africa. And for those of you dealing with Africa, I have to, do a lot more justice to Africa, because I have to talk about the Midianites and the other nations there who are on the side of Israel and assisting Israel. So I am going to go into that, as well as with the world wars. So I may just combine that all together. But we've generally just gone over those who were the captors of Israel was the focus, okay? And we've already gone into, of course, the Medo-Persians, which includes Assyria and India, the descendants of Shem, and Shem mixed with Japheth. And so now we're going to go into Russia. Tartaria, Gog and Magog, okay? And so these are the nations that we're going to find both scattered Israel, and these are also the nations that are coming to what does it say? That come forth to sharpen them for their hands. So if you'll notice or remember in my videos on the Muslims, I keep reiterating over and over again that they are going to try to usurp the identity of Israel and move with Israel through the regathering. But of course, Yah is going to ultimately have his way. And they're trying to get ahead of it all. Okay? And that's the strategy, because this is why you can't say that there are no black Edomites. By the same token, Russia is positioning itself to do exactly the same thing, because it has the largest portion of the Ish people, and it's very supportive of the Ish people. So Same thing, sharpen them for their hands, usurp the identity, same agenda from Japheth as is coming from Esau, Edom, and Ham. So let's get into these 4 artificers, okay? And notice how artificer can mean an artist or a builder or master builder. I just did a Google search for images on artificers and builders, and this is the image that came up. And this is obviously a Masonic type building. I couldn't even find out what it was. It was just a random photo, and you see it's got a tree with 6 branches, and then it's got the pineal pine cone at the top. And so this is clearly Masonic imagery in a Masonic temple. And these are the master builders. These are the architects, the artificers. So these aren't just carpenters. These are those who maketh a lie, okay? But this is the technical definition. Master builder or master mason is a central figure leading construction projects in pre-modern times and precursor to the modern architect and engineer. So the engineers we know are associated with masons, and architecture is also associated with masons. Okay, so these are the 4 carpenters or artificers. Okay, once again, Esau, Edom planted the top branch in Babylon, which is what the pineal gland on the top pine cone on the tree symbolizes. And of course, we have all the 8-sided honeycomb shaped in the ceiling, which is the hive mind of the Borg, the Borgias, okay? All right, so here's one of the key scriptures that helps us to identify some of these 4 carpenters. All right, so this is in the book of Ezra 15:20. Ezra, descendant of Zadok, and Aaron of the tribe of Levi, captive to the Medo-Persia and Artaxerxes. Behold, saith Yahuwah, I will call together all the kings of the earth to reverence me, which are from the rising of the sun, from the south, from the east, and Libanus, to turn themselves one against another and repay the things that they have done to them. The fire is gone forth from his wrath, and has consumed the foundations of the earth, and the sinners like straw that is kindled. So please watch the 4 carpenters on the Medo-Persians and Africa to refer to the rest of this, but I'm going to skip all the way down to verse 34, all right? So, behold, clouds from the east, and from the north, and from the south, and they are very horrible to look upon, full of wrath and storm, and they shall go steadfastly unto Babylon, and make her afraid, and they shall come to her and besiege her, the star and all wrath that they pour out upon her. Then shall the dust and smoke go up unto heaven, and all they that be about her shall bewail her. So this is Russia descending upon Babylon, Canada, and America. So like I said, the Roman kingdom was divided into 10 tribes. 10 tribes, all right, around between 190 AD and 476 AD. The Romans were removed by the Goths, okay? And this was, behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible and exceedingly strong, and its teeth were of iron, devouring and crushing to atoms, and it trampled the remainder of its feet. And it was altogether different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. So this is the emergence of the 10 horns, all right? And this comes from Tartaria and from the Mongoloids, who then morph into the Hebrew nations, all right, and take over the identity. So, and as I've said before, this is when there is all this mixing that goes on, but it's actually at the command of Yah. So if we look at, I've quoted this before, and this from the Septuagint, Jeremiah 31:27-32, and behold, the days will come, saith Yahuwah, that I will sow the house of Israel and the house of Yehudah with the seed of man and the seed of beast, because they are the seed of Satan, who is the beast. But then Daniel says, and whereas thou saw iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave to one another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. So this, I believe, is about transhumanism more so, and all their weird genetic mutations. But also there's something to be said, because Yah does say, every seed that I have not planted will be uprooted. And I think this has more to do with the fourth man, beasts of no nation, that come up as above, so below. So these orphan trained children and all of the children in the incubators and the Ubermensch of Germany, them trying to hybridize people and create a new man. And so please watch that video. It goes into a bit of that as far as the repopulation of America goes. And so this is the card for it. It has to be of his direction. And so these are all the groups, the fallen angel groups, the Suevi, the Visigoths, the Scythians, the Ostrogoths, the Vandals, the Saxons, the Lombards, the Franks, the Alemanni, the Burgundians. They become the German, Swiss, French, Italians, Portuguese, people of the Netherlands. They go into all the lands of Shem and take over their identities. All right, so this is Japheth's genealogy. Now, we're going to look into this, but I'm going to also look at other stuff regarding his genealogy. The sons of Japheth, Gomer and Magog and Madai and Yavan and Tubal and Meshech, which is supposed to be connected to the idea of Moscow, and Tiras. Okay? And the sons, but that's just a guess for some people. And the sons of Tubal were Arafi, Kesed, and Ta'ari. And the sons of Meshech were Don, Zaron, and Shashbashni. Okay, and that's according to Jasher. Now, Jasher is not very accurate. Jubilees is Jasher, not so much. They're always weaving in the Canaanites into the Hebrew line. And the children of Meshech are Shibashni, and the children of Tiras are Rushak. So this is in Jasher again. So this could tie to Russian, Rushash. Okay? So the children of Tiras could be tied, the last son, to the Russians. And he also had sons with Cushni and Ongolis. So these are those who, it looks like he married in with the Hamites too, because Cush is Ham and the priests of On are Babylonian, right? So that's just what's being said there, but Jasher is not a very historically reliable book, although somewhat. It's probably 60-70% reliable. All right, so here is the prophecy in Revelation and Ezekiel 38. Now, the reason why I'm looking at the prophecy and we're looking at the genealogy of Japheth here is because we want to look at the question of whether or not a lot of this prophecy already happened. Okay? Because we're going to look at the open door prophecy, the door to the promised land prophecy, and we're going to look at the final revelation prophecy. All right. It says in Revelation 28, and they shall go out and deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. So in the future, they will be gathered together like the sand of the sea, and they will become an overwhelming flood. Then Ezekiel 38 says, and the word of Yahuwah came to me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog and the land of Magog, Ros. So same thing, Rushash, prince of Meshech, and Tubal, right? We saw Tubal up here, right? And Meshech, right? That's in the genealogy here. Tubal and Meshech, right? And prophesy against him, and say to him, Thus saith Yahuwah, your Elohim, I will turn thee back and put hooks in thy jaw, and I will bring thee forth all thine army, horses and horsemen, and all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Persia, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet. Gomer and all his bands, and the house of Togarmah of the north quarters, and all his bands, and as many people with thee. And it says, it says they'll be going into the land, right? And there's a prophecy against them, and they will also come in again after the land is brought back from the sword. So that's what this prophecy goes into. This is just, I'm building a foundation, giving you guys some context here. Okay, so here's some of what happened to, according to the Antiquities of the Jews, the descendants of Japheth. All right, so Gomer founded the Greeks, who they were calling Galatians, but this is Gauls, not Gullah, not redeemers, but Gauls. But remember, they steal the identity too. But they were first called Gomerites, so that's who the Greeks were. Magog founded the Magogites, who the Greeks called the Scythians. The Scythians, okay? So we know that Russia has the scythe, or its symbol on its flag. Now, Javan and Madai, the sons of Japheth, became the Midians, the Medes, the Medo-Persians, okay? And some of Javan became the Greeks and Ionians, all right? So they would be a mixture of descendants of Japheth. And then Tubal founded the Tubalites. And then Meshech became the Cappadocians. All right. And then Javan became the Elysians or Aeolians. And then Tyros became the Thracians. Javan also became the Thracians. All right. A little hard to follow. You don't have to know all of it. We're just trying to track Gog and Magog. So, and for Tubal, there came forth the fifth portion in the midst of the tongue, which approaches towards the border of the portion of Lud, to the second tongue, to the region beyond the second tongue, unto the third tongue. So, these are the tongues again up here, and Lud's land all is included part of London. It goes all the way to here. This is Shem's land, is everything from India and then beyond the Mount Ararat. Okay, that's the border. The other side of it, all of this is Shem's land, including India. All right. And so when we go to this next slide, we see Rus is here. Russia is here. This map looks kind of weird, but here's the tongue. So there's 4 tongues here in the center of the earth. This is India. It's kind of hard to make it out. But all of the land, this side of the mountains is, again, Shem's land. So with the land this side and all the way around to North America is all Japheth's land. So here's Rus. Now, in terms of more of the ancestry of Japheth, I want to show you some of the Byzantine Empire images, and because this is why they have so many dark Russian icons in Russia. All right, so these are images from the Byzantine Empire. So this is the land of Japheth, okay? The destruction of Black Byzantine images. So it says that they focus here on Septimus Severus of Rome, who rose up against the Greeks. And he was supposed to be a black Jew at that time. But here are images of the people of the Byzantine Empire. And so I am not sure entirely if this is, I think this is actually Japheth, because we see so many images of them. Now these are religious paintings of King David and everything, and we know that the Israelites went up there and evangelized. But they have such an incredibly large amount of paintings of Black people, but they're kind of more stony faced. See what I mean? Like their features are not so Negro. Maybe not this one, but and I'm thinking this is Japheth. And this was also when his he had the Israelites in his nation. So he was colonized by the Arabs. He was colonized by the Romans, obviously, because that was actually where Rome was. There was a Rome in Russia. That's where Rome originated. It's in Russia and in North America. That's why they have so many buildings and structures in Russia that are high quality architecture. There's all this high quality architecture because this was Rome. That's why you have the Romance languages and you have the Romanians. That's where Rome originally was, because this is the land of Japheth. What we call Italy today is not the land of Japheth. It's the land of Shem. So this is what they look like. All right. Now I want you to know, just historically, just for some context, I want you to know that Rome is actually, true Rome is actually Turkey, okay, because they are Gentiles. And as we've gone into with the lands, and we're about to get into it again here in a second, the land of Japheth was on the other side of the Mount Ararat, okay? He went in the northwesterly direction for his land, whereas Israel's land was east. That means what we call west today, but that means towards Western Europe and all the way down to South Africa. That was, and in the middle of the ocean between what is known as America and Africa, that was all the way to India, all the way down to South Africa. That was all Shem's land. He got half the planet. So Rome, okay, or Rum in Arabic, we know Rumi was actually one of the sons of Esau, all right, is a derivative of the Middle Persian term haram. So that's like haram, all right, harem abith, Rome, okay? It's ultimately derived from the Greek haran.
Okay, so that is like Haram. Haram came out of Tyre. He was the son of a widow woman. He helped Solomon build his temple. Tyre is Tarshish, the Tyrians, okay? This is the land of Hasatan. What does it say in Ezekiel 28:35? Art thou wiser than Daniel, Hasatan? Or have not the wise instructed thee with knowledge? So the wise have instructed Hasatan with knowledge, all right? In thy abundant knowledge and thy traffic, thou hast multiplied thy power, the trafficking of souls, according to Scripture. And thou hast lifted up thy power. And so this is Haram Abif from the tribe of Naphtali, but he's born of a woman and his father is unknown, okay? His father was a Tyrian, a man of Haram, okay? Perhaps a Roman, a bastard who dwelt in Ashdod. Esau Edom is the bastard because his father is Satan, who is the bastard, because Yah cut him off, right? And so he was able to wrought all kinds of good works in building the temple. He was a skillful builder, but a descendant of Haram, prince of Tyre, and Esau Edom. This was when some mixing was going on. So Yaram, you see the Arabic says Yaram in Persian and Ottoman, Yaram, Haram. The latter was an endonym of the pre-Islamic inhabitants of Anatolia, the Middle East, and the Balkans, dating to when the regions were parts of the what? Byzantine Eastern Roman Empire. The term Rum is now used to describe the remaining pre-Islamic ethno-cultural Christian minorities living in the Near East and their descendants, notably the Antiochian Greek Christians who were members of the Greek Orthodox Church of Antioch, the Melkite Greek Catholic Church of Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Israel, Palestine, and the Hatay province in southern Turkey, Japheth, okay, Greek Japheth, Rome Japheth, all mixed with Esau, Edom, Chittim, okay? All right. Notice they are calling part of the land of Turkey Cathay. Cathay. They put Cathay in China, but now they're putting Turkey as Cathay. Turkey is Cathay. What does that tell you about some of the geography they've played around with and switched around? About a Cathay in North America, we've talked about a Cathay in Persia, and we've talked about a Cathay in China. So what's going on with the geography? All right, 378, the victory of the Visigoths over Rome. Attila then overcame them also. This is what we're going to see in just a second here. Hungarian. Gar is stranger. Okay, Genghis Khan. Chin is Jin. China. Jin is giant. Gar is giant and stranger. Conquered all of Europe and Mongolia. That's what Genghis Khan did. Gin me up and get me high on juice, right? Mixing with gin. They haven't polluted their blood with the blood of gin. Giants. That's why we have the word ogre here. The Huns were detested by Rome due to their barbarism. Son of the sons of Yah, that means the fallen angels. Og, according to the Hebrew Bible and other sources, was an Amorite king in Bashan. Gar, Jin, giant, Canaan. This is the premise I want to begin with, that there was this mixing with Ham, there was mixing with Esau, there was mixing in particular with Cyrus and Damascus, and the people of Damascus were saved first among the Gentiles, and they went and evangelized. But this is also where you see the black Russian icons that we just looked at. Well, Japheth may be a little more chocolatier than most people suspected. All right, from the Persian Koresh, he's half Midianite, and you see he's dark skinned. Okay, this is the image of him on the Medo-Persian temples and walls. And when you look at the Medo-Persian kingdom, their half Madai was of Japheth. The Persians were of Shem. The Midianites were of Japheth. Whenever we see pictures of them, they're portrayed as dark-skinned black people. Okay? And this is because I believe that Japheth was dark-skinned like his brothers. Why do I say this? Here's the Mongolians that he mixes in with. But originally he would have started off dark-skinned like his brothers. Well, why is this? Because the Celts were originally black. And when we look into the description of the lands of Japheth in Jubilees 8:26, it says it extends northerly to the north, and it extends to the mountains of Celt towards the north, towards the Sea of Ma'ok, and it goes forth to the east of Gadur. So that's near Niagara Falls, before it is destroyed, as far as the regions of the waters of the sea, which is the Canadian Rockies. So you can see here, these are the Canadian Rockies, the BC Rockies, and these mountains are called Mount Kelt. Okay? There aren't really any Celtic mountains in Britain. Okay? And so the Celts were originally black, and they were descendants of Japheth. Okay? We also have the black Vikings, who were also, so they talk a lot about how the Vikings were the descendants of the Europeans, and they were the descendants of Japheth, and they were black.
So we have all of these images, and there's a lot of documentation to prove that they were originally black. What does it say here? Origins of the European races. Characteristics of the French in the decade following 1860, especially those among the peasants in Brittany, were here only Celtic-speaking people on the continent. Here were the only Celtic-speaking people on the continent, and they were of a brunette and short race. Now, there's a lot of the Celtic-speaking population on the British Isles, particularly the Welsh, were equally short and of a dark complexion. All right, and there were also tall blonde ones, but initially they were black. And whenever they talked about, I showed it in my other video on Shem's land, and they talk about the people invading the northern kingdom in Israel. If you go into the land of Shem, northern kingdom video, you will see that they talk about the invading blacks. So they're Vikings and they're Danites mixed with Japheth, but they're black. All right, so Tartaria. So Tartarus, again, the origins of Tartarus is that, and we're going to go into the 70 nations. Yahuwah did not spare the angels when they sinned, and threw them down into Tartarus and delivered them to be kept in chains of darkness until the judgment. I will take and hurl him into murky Tartarus, far away in the deepest gulf between the earth, the gates whereof are iron, and threshold of bronze, as far beneath Hades as heaven is above the earth. Then shall you know how the mightiest arm am I of all Elohims. All right, so these fallen angels who mixed with women were thrown into Tartarus. All right, and they have been kept in eternal bonds and utter darkness for the day of judgment. All right, and the term Tardima also relates to a deep sleep, just like the state these angels are in. And a deep sleep fell upon Abraham, and so he saw the punishment of Israel coming upon them in this deep hypnotic sleep of the underworld. So this is where Israel goes into this Tartarus themselves, and then they exchange places with the fallen and their offspring who are down there. Okay, and so we have Esau mixing in here. I show this a lot with the Gentiles. And we have the invention of the Jewish people. And so the land of Rus is very much associated with the Byzantine Empire. And it's interesting, Byzantine means two people mixed together, right? And there is a point where Khazaria, the Khazarians in the Mongolian Empire, the Khazars, maintained extensive relations with the Byzantine Empire. And then the future emperor Justinian, who is exiled to Crimea and escapes at the end of the 7th century to the Khazarian kingdom, he ends up marrying a Khazar princess, and she's rebaptized as Theodora. And so there are marital ties, and then we see that Constantine also in this time allies himself by marriage with Khazaria. Now we know Constantine at the time was an Edomite, and he's securing the Holy Roman Empire, and he's mixing in with Canaan, and he's bringing the fallen seed in to rule the world. Okay, so there's this whole, we're going to go into this whole transition, and this is why I'm emphasizing the whole skin color thing. And this whole transition from Japheth to Esau to the fallen angel seed running Western Europe. Okay, so there was a Ukrainian Nestor or chronicler in the 9th and 10th century, so in 1065 to 1106, and he had this book of chronicles that's supposed to be famous. But as usual, I find that they always just make stuff up and they cobble it all together from a whole bunch of different historical sources, and then they say one guy did it. Like they'll say one guy designed and built all the buildings all over America in a 6-year period that would take hundreds of years to build. Like it's that kind of thing. So he's kind of one of them, and he was a Ukrainian chronicler. Okay. So, but I want you to look at the people in these images so that you can get a picture of the real history. So, the Mongolian Empire invaded the Russian Empire December 21st, 1237, around that time, between 1220s to 1240s, through the rule of Genghis Khan, who ruled the Mongolian Empire. Now, remember, he and his line had taken over from the Ethiopian black Presters, right? They were now taking on that identity. Prester John. And this kingdom most probably identifies as the medieval Russia or the horde known as the Great Mongolian Empire according to medieval tradition. Prester John belonged to a very old genus and was really a descendant of the Magi, right? So that's the Assyrians. That is the Shemites, the Medo-Persians, or the Persians, I guess. And it is possible that the tribes of his subjects were the same as the infidel Turks of Benjamin of Toluja. All right? And so this is what they call themselves, Twedros. Like even today, the Ethiopian head of the WHO calls himself, his last name's Twedros, Tudors, right? So they took on this identity confusion by mixing. And this is after the king Yelu. There was a king Yelu first who conquered all the land, and he conquered all the Arabs. And then up came the Hun, and the Hun paid tribute to him. Yelu Dashi or Yelu Tashi had defeated all of the Islamists in the area of Tartaria all the way to Ethiopia. And he had a great empire, and the Arabs really respected him even in their defeat. He gave birth to a son who was the next Prester, and this Prester gets into it with the Huns. All right, and so this was the switch in this Prester John, the legend and its sources. Genghis Khan was serving one of the descendants of Prester John, and he worked very hard serving him as a vassal, and their nation paid tribute. Is being given a tax of one animal for every 10. And the Tartars and Huns multiplied greatly. And when Prester saw that they were such great people, he said to them that they could harm him, and said that it would be wise to disperse them throughout many lands. So he sent one of his barons to do that, and the Tartars heard what Prester John wanted to do to them, and they became sad, and they all departed together and headed for the desert towards the north, where Prester John could not harm them, and they rejoiced because they no longer had to pay taxes to him. Then they multiplied to become such a great multitude of Tartars that it was marvelous to them. And when Genghis Khan saw that he had such a great people, he prepared them with bow and other weapons and went conquering throughout certain other regions. And they conquered 8 provinces. Okay? So next, he then, skipping down second paragraph, sent messengers to Prester John, and this was the year 1200. And he sent word to him that he wanted the Prester to give him his daughter as a wife. And when Prester John heard that Genghis Khan offered him to give his daughter as a wife, he was greatly outraged. So he rejects this whole idea because, it's a different seed and everything. And he threatens to kill him and says he's a vassal. So then when Genghis Khan heard about the great dishonor Prester John had done him, he was inflamed. So anyway, they wind up going to war with each other. 2 days later, both sides armed themselves and fought each other, and the battle was so great as that its like has never seen before. Heavy losses were sustained on both sides, but in the end, Genghis Khan won the battle, and in this battle, Prester John was killed. And from that day, Genghis Khan was constantly attacking that land which he held before he died. And I say to you that Genghis reigned for 6 years after this battle and conquered many castles and many provinces. He takes the daughter of Prester John, and then they begin to mix in with her. And these are the Shiite dynasties of Asia. And, all right, the line of Menelik became when mixed in with the Huns, so mixed in with the Chinese, Asian, Mongoloids. All right. We talked about this in the last Prester John video. And this was the last Menelik. All right, he's old here, so he's looking kind of faded out. But that's his descendancy among the Mongoloids. This was also a Menelik. The language of the Russians through the Slavonic language of the Russian Empire, which is now Belarus, and the Ukraine, is part of the Russian Empire that then gave birth to the Germanic bloodline. The Russians and the Germanics really mix in with the fallen angel seed, and so this is where you have the Khazars, where you have the so-called Jewish people, like the Polish, the Ukrainians, and the Russian so-called Jews coming out of the Khazars. And they're mixing in very much with the blondes. And so this is the germ line, the Germanic, manic depressive germ bloodline. Okay?
So fallen angel, like I don't belong here, see, like in the movie American Psycho with all the guys who are kind of blood drinkers and people eaters.
So there's a whole connection to why Putin has invaded the Ukraine, because there's this global reset coming on. Now they're going to make it into something else. So the white fallen angel seed can, try and sharpen the whole situation for their hands, just like the black ones are, okay? Just like the Edomites are. So the Japhethite white fallen angel seed are trying to sharpen this whole transition and using the white Jews for their purposes. And so we're going to find out that obviously there's a lot of white South Africans, and isn't that where the planes of Putin recently landed, right? But let's take a look at these people. Look at how black these people are. And Nestor the chronicler was known for chronicling this particular saint, okay, of the Russian Orthodox Church. So he was chronicling this guy, Theodosius of the Kiev caves, probably mixed in with some of Esau, Edom, right? Northern Kingdom. Because you see the Theodosius and then you see Kiev caves. So you look and see how black they are, right? Evangelizing Europe. And this is, a lot of this stuff is a guess because it's challenging to figure this out. All right? But you see there's an association. He begins his history with what? The flood. And look who's come up from the flood. So this might be tied to many of the conflagrations going on and the dead things coming up from the sea. And look, there's a lion on top, right, of all these people coming up from the underworld. So this is Kiev, all right? So the Prince of Rus lived in Kiev. So we just referred to Kiev. We saw a dark-skinned brother in that land who was a saint of spreading the word and evangelizing, who was contextualized by this. This is the brownest version of him I could find. They're all the white bearded man. So it's Santa Claus basically, right? Satan. So, all right. The princes of Rus lived in Kiev, Russia, until the Mongol hordes invaded. And the princes paid tribute and intermarried to keep the peace. All right. The invaders stopped in Russia in 1242. And this is the time when Persia was lost and people took on different features. Now, keep in mind, who are the Medo-Persians? Who ran the Persian Empire and what was it? Persia was Damascus, and that's where Paul went first to evangelize to the Gentiles, the Medo-Persians, who were mixed with the Shemites, the Medo-Persians. All right, so at this time, this is the fall of the empire of Japheth that we're tracking here. Because from my last video, I was like, what were these Crimean wars about? Why did Crimea fall at the same time all these black nations were falling? Right? I was like, why did they fall around the same time? All right, because these are the original seeds and sons of Noah. All right? So, this is the time when Persia was lost and people took on different features. So now they're no longer black or brown, but they're white. And so then fraternal orders and Freemasons flourish. All right? And so these Phoenicians and the Russians start to rise up, and there's a lot of Mongol Ottoman invasions. So remember, I showed you, right? So now this is the shift from black to white. And there is a Prince Yaroslav the Black, who was son of King Vladimir, Volo the Great of the Rus. So they were who gave Kiev on Rus the throne to his younger son Boris. And the two of them, it says, the jealous and maddened Prince Yaroslav would rule Rostov and Novgorod, and his sons would protect the king's realm in different provinces, forming the Slavic Norman kingdoms. Okay? So these, I think, are the black Japhethites. And as I said, there was a Mongol invasion, right? So there was this Mikhail of Chernigov. This is his icon. We see he's kind of a brother, right? And there's a whole bunch of other brothers evangelizing. The Medo-Persians, right, of Damascus, who became believers, evangelizing all throughout the land, with probably the sons of Japheth, with the Israelites, right, the apostles. And so these people were also called Muscovites, etc. So the Mongolian Empire invaded Russia around 1237 to 1240. And this guy was slain by Hun for not submitting to the Khan. Okay, so there is a tie-in to this because they call themselves Muscovites, but Elon Musk, he is supposed to be in South Africa as well, and they're supposed to have descendants there, but obviously they're not the true Israelites, right? The true Israelites are black. And the true Gentiles are black, right? The true Japhethites. So what do we see here? Here we see these images from the 14th century, and these are from chroniclers. So they would have these people chronicling their history in Russia, and see how they're all black. This is in the 14th century. Now, like they said, they were mixing in with Esau, Edom, and the Mongols a bit. But still, they're quite black looking. And here's, I believe, a queen. Sometimes they make them look transgender when they get their hands on the paintings and start changing them up. But, so these Russian bloodlines were initially Slavic. They produce czars, which are the Vikings. We showed you the black Vikings, right? This is my theory, right? And there was one prince who betrayed all of the other rulers of Russia, the Gentile Japhethite rulers, called Vladimir, during the time of the Mongolian invasion. And he was called Saint Keith. And the place where he betrayed was currently the capital of Ukraine. All right? And he was one of 4 Orthodox priests that betrayed the Russian people to the Mongolian Empire in connection with Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan. Jin, giant Khan. Okay? Og of Bashan, Jin. Canaanites. And so the language is now Belarus, but it was not then. And like I said, that gave birth to the Germanic bloodline. These are just my wild notes, guys. This is coming off of Wikipedia. We see a bit of the influence of Edom in the looks of these people, right? And so these are the Muscovites, and this is the great Ivan III. And he battled the Golden Horde of the Mongolian Empire. Okay? So there was a season that when this is the time when the bloodline was taken over by the invading bloodline of the Khazars. Okay? And so it was from this period, from the beginning with the Mongols. All right? So in around the 1500s, mid 1500s, this Grand Prince of Moscow, Ivan IV, right? His father had battled the Golden Horde. And these are the true ones who go back to the original Slavic bloodlines and had relationships with Damascus. Okay? And now this is the dynasty that produces the czars. Okay? So Ivan the Terrible, they call him Ivan the Terrible, because he resisted the encroachment of the Canaanites and the Mongols and the Khazarians. All right, and he was called a terrorist, even though what they do, like Vlad the Impaler, they rape and eat children. They're which they terrorize today for adrenochrome. So they called him the terrorist because they always reverse psychology you. They always call you what they are. Okay? And then there's Fyodor Ivanovich, which was his son, and he was the last Rurikid. He was the last sort of high-breed Gentile to be ruling in that land. The Rurikid dynasty. Rurikid. And so his father, like I said, Ivan the Terrible, was the penultimate representative of that dynasty. And he was Grand Prince of Moscow. A lot of strife in those years among the clans of the warrior castes, commonly termed the boyars. So this is a period when they're mixing in with the Borgias. Okay? That's why they look somewhat Edomitish, but they're Gentile as well. And you see here, this is one of the chroniclers that I found, and he does this chronicling, Mark Catil, and then suddenly this person no longer appears in medieval diplomas because he's probably telling the truth, and then he's wiped out. And then you start to see more of these chroniclers of Edom. All right. And so once again, these Jews, these Edomites, married in with the Japhethites, and most of the Negro strain in Northern Europe and Russia was taken in by the Jews in spite of religious prejudice against them. So what it is that they're confused with this history, right? So Esau, Edom was called the Jews, and they were black, but so were the Japhethites. And then you also have the Canaanites, who were very pale, mixing in with them all together. And one of the examples of this, of course, says Eastern Jews who settled in Austria, Poland, and Russia were Negro too. Okay, China, the Ukraine, and the Huns. According to the Jewish Encyclopedia, Seir was a mountain range south of the Dead Sea. Okay, so the geography we don't know, all right? But I believe that Mount Seir was probably in the Caucasus Mountains. That's why they're so highlighted, the Caucasus Mountains. Or possibly, the Swiss Alps, either one of those two. But thus Esau dwelt in Mount Seir. Esau is Edom. Therefore, the Jews today admit that the Khazar Jews are from Esau. Okay? So now I'm not talking about everyday people. I'm talking about the people running these establishments who are in the know about all the secrets, okay? The architects, the master builders, the masons, right? They run everything and they know everything. So the relationship between the people of Mount Seir, or the fallen angel seed, and Esau, Edom began a long, long time ago. And at one point, the Khazars, through Leo IV, actually took Rome from Esau. And so theirs is this relationship. It's a power struggle, but it's a continued long marriage relationship. Though most of the modern Jews of today claim to have come from the tribe of Judah, they are really a hybrid of people consisting of the Edomites, Canaanites, Jaduhite, Babylonians, Huns, Khazars, Slavs, and such. Hence, the majority of the world's Jewish people, as we know them today, are a mixture of the blood of Israel, Edom, Khazaria, and other nations. Arthur Koestler had record of a letter by a Khazar king who traced his genealogy back to Japheth's son, Togarmah, the ancestor of all Turkish tribes. Okay, and so that was King Bulan. Okay, and even his name, Baal, it's Baalan. He's a Baalan. All right, so he's worshiping Baal. The Jews in Europe, the Khazar government was destroyed by Russia in 1016 AD, and their land later invaded by the hordes of Genghis Khan around 1200 AD. The European banking conglomeration was started by a Jew named Amschel Moses Myers, who later changed his name to Rothschild. So that is the Rothschild origins, and now we're just going to go a little bit more into this mixture between the Huns. So a Hun is a Japheth and Canaan mix, okay? And then we'll get into the Khazars. All right, so Bantu Khan. Batu, this is not Bantu, but Batu Khan. He was known as Tsar Batu in Russian historiography, and he was the Mongol ruler of the Golden Horde of the Mongol Empire. And he was the grandson of Genghis Khan, who we just talked about. And he ruled over Kievan Rus, Volga, Bulgaria. Okay, and the Caucasus for around 250 years. So there he is, and see, very Asian looking. And this is what the scripture says. Thus saith Yehuda, behold, the people comes from the north, nations shall be stirred up from the end of the earth, and they shall lay hold on the bow and the spear. The people is fierce, and they will have no mercy, and their voices as the roaring of the sea, and they shall array themselves for war against thee as fire on horses, and chariots, O daughter of Zion. Far out of the north there cometh a nation up against her, which shall make her land desolate, and none shall dwell therein, and they shall remove and they shall depart, both man and beast. And we saw that there was that somewhat happened with him, Genghis Khan. So the Muslims have their own perspective on who Gog and Magog are. And they say Gog and Magog are one. They're related, and they're actual human beings. They call them Juj and Majuj, and they actually exist on Earth. And they existed close to the time of Musa, alayhi salam, in the era of a great king named Little Canaan. So he was kind of a Hun king or a Prester king. And he was a king, a man wearing 2 horns, okay? And in the Quran, he was an extremely powerful king and a worshiper of Allah. And he was among the best that ever existed in the whole world and within all of civilization, because civilization hadn't reached the whole world. In other words, Tartaria. But he was ruler over whatever civilization existed in the whole world, as far as civilization would go. And he would physically go out with his army, looking everywhere as far as he could go, and he would spend his life traveling the world and applying justice. And so what happened was that when he reached the place of the setting sun, he found it sitting in a murky pond, okay? And he found over there a group of people, and there was no more land beyond the land where he reached, and there was no more civilization. And the people could not really speak to him because they were cut off from all civilization. And he found that they could hardly understand little primitive speech, normal speech. But they communicated to him with all kinds of signs and symbols, with images and so on, that Juj and Majuj, or Gog and Magog, were causing a lot of evil in the earth. And so this means that this tribe was interacting with Juj and Majuj, and that they said they were plundering us and killing us and raping us, and they're causing us damage and causing much evil in the land. Can you help us? Then they say, we will pay you. You're such a mighty king. You have a vast army, and you're clearly from a superior civilization. You seem to be a good man because you're so nice to us. Take this money and protect us from the huge Juj and Majuj. Can you build a wall between us and them so that they don't come through into this valley? Can you build a barrier between us and them so that they can be cut off from the world? And so what this king says is, bring me all of these sheets of iron. Now, this is a story that is also in the Quran applied to Moses, saying that Moses built this wall, and that it's the Great Wall of China in India, which is basically one wall. All right? And the Iron Curtain also has something in common with this. So anyway, they built this huge wall between 2 mountains so that Juj and Majuj were separated inside the area. And it was supposed to be impenetrable to anything, with only a small circle that you could make with your fingers, like the OK sign, and that was all that was left of it. And then the prophecy is that when this barrier crumbles and falls flat, then that would be the time that this nation of giants would come over. When we talk about that wall that was built, the Iron Curtain that is referred to in politics, as well as here it is in Germany, the Iron Curtain that divides Russia from Germany. Here it is erected here, all right? And so, as I said, with this story of Gog and Magog, or the man who was asked to build this wall, it already happened. The wall was built, and it was, some of the Quran is more accurate, the one of the Midianites, the Korathites, and it says that Moses actually built the wall. And it is the Great Wall of China. All right? And so this is that was supposed to be the great righteous ruler and conqueror. Some say it was Alexander the Great, etc., etc. Okay? So that is the Iron Curtain, the Iron Wall. All right, so let's go back to this. So Gog, Iron Mountain. So we saw the Iron Curtain associated with the Iron Mountain. There's even a prophecy where I believe it's Jeremiah lays on his side with an iron pan. Okay, that means, and the iron was used to slay Abel by Cain. So this represents the warring nations, the warring nations. And so when we look in Ezekiel, it says that, and thou shalt come up against my people Israel as a cloud to cover the land, and it shall be in the latter days, and I will bring thee against my land, that the heathen may know me when I shall be sanctified in thee, Gog and Magog, before their eyes. So I believe this is a double prophecy. Initially, Israel was overrun by Gog and Magog. Okay, behold the army from the north. And that already happened, but in the future, the same thing will happen again, but they will be defeated. And there is a company called Iron Mountain, and they shred and store information, okay, for all the biggest corporations in the world.
But didn't this all already happen? Didn't the horde overwhelm the United States? Didn't they overwhelm Britain? And didn't they overwhelm the Congo and South Africa? Didn't they overrun it already? I think the timing is rather that now it's time for the second time for this to happen, and the third. The Belgians, the Swiss, the British, the Tartars, all of these people are the same nations. They are the Amorites and the Canaanites and the people of Seir.
We have the whole history in the scripture of Methuselah taking a wife for his son Lamech, and she became pregnant and bore him a son, and his body was as white as snow and as red as a rose, and the hair of his head was as white as wool. Right? So they were afraid of him because the whole house glowed like the sun when he opened his eyes.
So this tells us a little bit of something about the potential roots of Japheth.
And so they have to go to Enoch for advice, and Enoch says he is for the time to come. But I also want to show you that in the book of Enoch and Jubilees, there are these unclean demons that lead the sons of Noah astray. And 1/10 of the demons are given to Mastema, who's another name for Hasatan. He says, let some of them remain before me. The other ones are chained in hell, like I showed you before. They get chained in hell for mixing with women. And so these are these angels for corruption and for leading astray before Hasatan and Yah's judgment. For great is the wickedness of the sons of men. And then when we go into Enoch, we find out that these angels that lead people astray are committed to Hasatan. There are 70 angels corresponding with 70 nations. And those 70 nations currently rule, and of those 70 nations, 7 are Canaanites. Okay? 7 to 10. Some people say 3 are gone. But regardless, it's 70 nations. We know about them because Judah actually did marry a Canaanite woman, and she had 2 sons that died because they spilled their seed. And Yah reckoned them, it says in Jubilees, among the 70 nations. Why? Because they spilled their seed. So he considered them Gentiles. He considered them Canaanites. And Deuteronomy said when the Most High divided the nations, their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam. He set the bounds of the people according to the number of children of Israel. For Yahuwah's portion is his people, and Jacob's lot is the lot of his inheritance.
And notice these sons of Judah are called Er is one to Er, and Onan. So one was a priest of On. He was being led that way by his Canaanite mother. All right. You see, the portion of Israel is, it says that when Most High divided the nations, he separated the sons of Adam and appointed the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. Okay? And according to the number of the angels as well, is what the Septuagint says. However, Israel as a nation was not under the rulership of the 70 nations. Then they get put under the rulership of the 70 nations, who are under the rulership in turn of those 70 angels. Okay? And those 70 angels are under Metatron, Ha-Satan. So basically, Israel is Yahuwah's portion. Israel is Yahuwah's portion. And what happens is that the 70 nations are ruled by 70 shepherds. And so the 70 shepherds of the 70 nations are given license to destroy a certain number who are numbered to be destroyed, and the rest to save and be guardians and priests over. And of course, they wind up terribly abusing Israel. And this is why Yahuwah comes to judge the nations and to save and redeem Israel. And so that is in Enoch in the 70 shepherds parable. What does Enoch say? The period of the 70 shepherds. And he called 70 shepherds and cast those sheep to them that they might pasture them. And he spoke to the shepherds and their companions, saying, let each individual of you pasture the sheep henceforwards, everything that I command you, that do ye. And I will deliver them over to you duly numbered, and tell you which of them are to be destroyed, and which of them destroy ye. And he gave over unto them those sheep, and he called another and spake unto him, observe and mark everything that the shepherds will do to these sheep, for they will destroy more of them than I have commanded them, and every excess and destruction which will be wrought, they will destroy more of them than I commanded them, and in every excess and destruction which will be wrought through the shepherds record, namely how many they destroy according to my command, and how many according to their own caprice, their own capricious will. Record against every individual shepherd all the destruction he effects, and read out this as a testimony against them, and know every deed of the shepherds, that I may comprehend and see what they will do, whether or not they will abide by my command which I have commanded them. And the lions and the tigers eat and devoured the greater part of those sheep, lions and tigers and bears, oh my! And the wild boars eat along with them. And they burnt that tower and demolished that house. And I became exceedingly sorrowful over that tower, because that house of the sheep was demolished. And so now we continue on here. And the Lord of the sheep remained unmoved until all the sheep were dispersed over the field and mingled with them. Okay, so dispersed to the four corners of the earth, right? They're dispersed now. And they did not save them out of the hand of the beasts. And this one who wrote the book carried it up and showed it and read it before Yahuwah of the sheep, and implored him on their account, and besought him on their account, and showed him all the doings of the 70 shepherds, the Gentiles, and gave a testimony before him against all the shepherds. And he took the actual book, and he laid it down beside him, and departed. And I saw, now we're going to way ahead, guys. And I saw that man who wrote the book according to the command of Yahuwah till he opened that book concerning the destruction which those 12 last shepherds had wrought, and showed that they had destroyed much more than their predecessors, much more than their predecessors before Yahuwah of the sheep. And I saw till Yahuwah of the sheep came unto them, and took in his hand the staff of his wrath, and smote the earth, and the earth clave asunder, and all the beasts and all the birds of heaven fell from among those sheep, and were swallowed up in the earth until it covered them. Okay, so that is the period of the 70 shepherds, and that is the judgment that is coming against the Gentiles, the Gentile nations. So just so you're aware, this is Enoch. So what are the fallen angel aspects of Japheth or Gog and Magog that tie him to the Tartarian horde?
All right, so Gog and Magog. We just saw Gog and Magog. We saw the giants in the Mongolian, Canaanitish empires in Asia. And this is also who they represent. This is in Britain, okay? So it says Gog and Magog was a legendary giant in Welsh and later English mythology, according to Geoffrey Monmouth's Historia Regum Britanniae. So Gog and Magog was a legendary giant in Welsh and later English mythology, according to Historia Regum Britanniae, the history of the kings of Britain. And he was a giant inhabitant of Albion thrown off a cliff during a wrestling match with Corneus, a companion of Brutus of Troy. He was the last of the giants found by Brutus and his men inhabiting the land of Albion. So this again was sort of Esau, or a kind of Alexander the Great clearing the land of giants with very likely Jacob or Dan. And you see one is Caucasian, blonde, fallen angel looking, and then the other is Canaanitish looking, very Asian looking. One carries a ball, and the other the axe that's laid to the root of the tree, and the ball like Tubal Cain or Baal, right? And so that's who they represent. And Tubal Cain, I want to show you this. So Tubal Cain, as I've said before, has a relationship to 007. So the Queen of England are really descendants of these fallen angels. And first of all, they were in the land of Japheth because they were amongst the Tartarians and the Canaanites. So it's really that the queen serves Russia and Tartaria, and that power shift is going real time in that direction now. All right, and so here's again the prophecy in Jubilees. And the word of Yahuwah came to me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog and Magog in the land of Magog, prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophecy against him. Okay, I want you to see this though, because in Jasher, when Tubal Cain is born, he is born to Zilhah, one of the daughters of Cain. And at this time, women drank a draught to render them barren so they would be beautiful. And they wouldn't get fat and all stretched out of shape. And because when they did, the childbearing women appeared abominable in the sight of their husbands as widows whilst their husbands lived. But to the barren ones, they were only attached because they always looked beautiful, right? So, and at the end of days and years, when Zilhah became old, Yahuwah opened her womb, and she conceived and bare a son, and his name was Tubal Cain, saying, After I have withered away, I have obtained him from the Almighty Yahuwah.
Then one day the second Cain, Tubal Cain, goes out hunting with his grandfather Lamech.
The grandfather can't really see, and Cain is kind of trying to direct his arrow while he's shooting. Why he's hunting when he's blind, who knows? And so they accidentally shoot Cain, who is at a distance from them, and he falls to the ground and dies. And it says, and Yahuwah requited Cain's evil according to his wickedness, which he had done to his brother Abel, according to the word of Yahuwah, which had been spoken. And so it came to pass when Cain died that Lamech and Tubal went to see the animal, because they thought they had slain an animal, which they had slain, and they saw, and behold, Cain, their grandfather, was fallen dead upon the earth. And Lamech was very much grieved at having done this, and in clapping his hands together, he struck his son also and caused his death. So this is before the flood. So basically 2 people are killed at once. And so it's like 2 murders in one. All right? So the first murder, of course, was Abel, and then this is the second and third murder of all time. And hence Tubal Cain. And so this is something that Hasatan celebrates, death of his own seed. And so this is 007, and 007 celebrates the gun and everything as well. So those are some of the origins of 007, Tubal Cain, and Russia, and all the KGB spy movies.
Tubal Cain, because 2 were killed at once. The Cain is the 7. It looks like a cane, but it's also the 7 nations. And the 70 shepherds, or the 70 angels that rule over the nations and have actually been given charge over Israel in their captivity as well. Okay, so that's the reason for Tubal Cain. And the T in Tubal is the tree of Baal-Zebub, Cain. So he comes from the tree of Baal-Zebub. That is his root.
Russians originally, a lot of them were black. They were black Russians, okay? And very likely the original Russians were probably a little browner, right? Because this was not the fallen angel seed. But nonetheless, Esau went up in there. And we know that they are associated with Rusadan, the Sudonians, all right? And so that can be the Sudanese and the Sudonians. And the Zidonians oppressed the 10 tribes of Asher. Soon the Zidonians were oppressing the Israelites in the promised land. Sidon or Sadia probably meant fishery or fishing town, etc. All right, and there was a queen of Georgia known as Rusadon, tied to the Sidonians or the Sadia. All right, the descendants of the biblical and Israelites. We've kind of touched on this a bit. Israeli Jews consist of 2 groups. Ashkenazi Sephardim, 10 to 20% are known as Sephardim or Eastern Jew. The remaining 80 to 90% are Ashkenazi or European Jew. The Ashkenazi Jew comes from the Eastern European countries. The Sephardim come from Mid-East countries. So those are probably the darker Edomites, right? And Danites, right? And I think Naphtali was there also. Let history show us who the Khazars and Sephardim are. In the year 450 AD, one of Europe's barbaric tribes was beginning to show signs of restlessness. This tribe was called the Khazars. Within the next 200 years, the Khazars would form Eastern Europe's largest, most powerful kingdom. They would rule about 200 years, ranking in power with the Muslim Caliphate and the Byzantine Empire. Their kingdom of approximately 1 million square miles bordered the Aral Sea on the east, Kiev, and the Ukrainian steppes on the west. Now that is not the land of Japheth, that's the land of Shem. Where the Ukraine is, that's the land of Shem, and Poland and everything. The Caucasus Mountain and the Black Sea on the south, and the Ural Mountain on the north. Khazaria represented an important period in the European history. Without their valor, Europe would have probably been 100% Muslim today. Why don't we hear more about the Khazars and their mighty empire today? Well, let's look at the genealogy of the Khazars. Since the matter is so important, we shall allow the Kagan or king of the Khazars to inform us. So a Khazar king named Joseph corresponded with Spanish Israelite named Hasdai Ibn Sharprut, sometime between 954 and 961 CE. All right, the manuscripts of this correspondence are in the Library of Christ Church at Oxford, England, in the Leningrad Public Library in Leningrad, Russia. And so in both of those libraries, Hasdai was the chief minister of the Caliph of Cordoba, Abd al-Rahman III. Okay, that sounds like a very Arabic name. Caliph, Rahman, that sounds like kind of Asian and East Indian. And Ra, sun god. At the time, Cordoba was the splendor of Moorish Spain, a mixture of black-skinned Muslims and Israelites, the main center of European culture. In his letter to Hasdai, King Joseph stated that he was from the line of Japheth, from the seed of Togarmah, Japheth's grandson. He further stated that Togarmah, who was the brother of Ashkenaz, had 10 sons, and the Khazars represented the 7th son. With his own lips, this king had given the root of his being and the lineage of his offspring, which was from the sons of Japheth. With his own lips, this king had given the root of his being and the lineage of his offspring, which was from the sons of Japheth.
Can't be stated, family. It cannot be stated any clearer than that. He was literally the 7th son, 007, Cain, 7 nations, 70 shepherds, 70 angels, Septimus Severus. What more do you want?
Stay tuned, guys, because we're going to show you how this is all lining up prophetically. So, according to Invention of the Jewish People, page 223, regarding the authenticity of these letters that were received about this conversion, what is said by King, son of Aaron, the Khazar priest. So this sharp scholar who detested fables became convinced, and he admitted as much, that the Khazars proselytized and had proselyte kings. I have heard that all this is written in the books of the Ishmaelites, who were living then and wrote about it in their books. He therefore copied the letter of the king Joseph and quoted a part of it in his own work. So this is a Khazar priest, supposed descendant of Aaron. Then page 224, the Khazars were a coalition of strong Turkic, Hunnic, Bulgar clans who, as they began to settle down, mingled with the Scythians, who had inhabited these mountains and steppes between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea, which was known for a long time as the Khazar Sea. Okay, and the Scythians are some of those fallen angel seed. At its peak, the kingdom encompassed an assortment of tribes and linguistic groups, Alans and Bulgars and Magyars and Slavs. The Khazars collected taxes from them and ruled over a vast landmass stretching from Kiev, which is in the Ukraine, northwest to the Crimean Peninsula into the south from Upper Volga to present-day Georgia. I'm saying this to say that the enemy has players on both sides of the color scheme, and what Black Esau wants you to do is believe that all of the Edomites are white. And what White Esau wants you to believe is that Israel is white. So anyway, you just have to be wise. The true seed of Israel is the Adamic seed, which is made in the image of Yah, and the first Adam, which is what Israel looks like, the people of the transatlantic slave trade. But there are people of all kinds who are saved.
What did Noah look like? He was white like the angels in their fallen state, because I believe the angels are black. But he was white. And remember, if you get leprosy and you become all white, you're considered pure, clean again. And so this is how Yah was able to, by his own law, turn the tables. Because according to his own law, he made the Gentiles clean. They had been completely bleach out. Him a bleach out them skin. Him a bleach them out. They became a tabula rasa, so he could write on their hearts. Okay, a love for him. He let those 70 angels take them for all those thousands of years. And then he took them back. So that's why even people among the Gentiles are saved. Okay. Who, it says, the Gentile nations shall serve Israel, that the nations were divided according to the number of the children of Israel and the number of the 70 shepherd Malachim, their adversaries. So, there has to be Gentiles, there has to be kings, and there has to be people who are ruled. There's got to be Indians and there's got to be chiefs. Okay? They can't be the same person.
Continuing with the book, the ruler of Khazaria maintained extensive relations with the Byzantine Empire. The future Emperor Justinian, who had been exiled to Crimea, escaped at the end of the 7th century to the Khazar kingdom, where he married a Khazar princess. She was rebaptized as Theodora, and would later be a powerful empress. Nor was this the only marital tie between the realms. The 10th century ruler and author Constantine the Seventh, I think, wrote that Emperor, I'm not even going to try butchering that name, Emperor Leo allied himself by marriage with the Khagan of Khazaria, accepting his daughter as wife for his son Constantine V, shaming the Byzantine Empire and himself because he thereby abandoned the precepts of the forefathers and treated them with disdain. So they're basically saying that they did marry in with this group of people, and it was considered to be against Torah or the law, right? But nonetheless, they did. And then here is Leo III they're talking about, and he is an Isaurian, also known as the Syrian, by Byzantine emperor from 1717 until his death in 1741, and the founder of the Isaurian dynasty. He put an end to 20 years anarchy, a period of great instability in the Byzantine Empire. So he's an Edomite, clearly, right? So you see Esau mixing with the Khazarians very clearly. Boy, this is, if you check out in Israel, all the Jewish people really have all of this behind the scenes stuff they're doing with Wikipedia and everything. They have a military op in Israel that deals with that. And they have laced the whole internet with Esau and Edom. It's clear, like it's everywhere. So they're definitely fighting. Anyway, so I'm going to go into this again. What color was Ramses' hair? This is the whole genealogy of Amalek that is connected to Ramses and Seti and all of that. And they are all descended from Eliphaz and his wife Timnah, who was the offspring of Ada. And Esau had 4 Hittite wives, and Ada was the 3rd that Eliphaz came from. He married Timnah, and that's where Duke Amalek came from. So Amalek was a great enemy of Israel. And I believe that it's either that or the Horites that the Rothschilds come from. And so when we look at this, it says, so Amalek was from Mount Seir. And this is where the red-haired trait comes from. And these are the seasons that the fallen angels were ruling in place, like in empires like Egypt. They eventually worked their way to the top, right? In any empire. All right, Arthur Koestler's 13th tribe, continuing. Montefiores, the Lusadas, Montagues, Avigdors, Sutros, and Sassoons can claim no pure racial origin than the Ashkenazis. We are told, for example, that a certain Judah ben Ezekiel opposed his son marrying a woman who was not the seed of Abraham, whereupon his friend Ukla remarked, "How do we know for certain that we ourselves are not descended from the heathens who violated the maidens of Zion at the siege of Jerusalem?" Okay, and these are Rapine people, okay? Because we know that Sarah and Rebecca were just taken by the Egyptian kings, but also I think it was Amalek king, right? Amalekite king. And Dinah was just taken by the king of Shechem. And Yalidashi's granddaughter was just taken by Genghis Khan, and so have been the women of the transatlantic slave trade. All right, so the seed of the woman is at enmity with the seed of the serpent, right, as Genesis says. It is indeed the crucial point in the anthropology of the Jews. We find in Asia Minor, Syria, and Palestine at that time many races. The Amorites, who were blondes, dolichocephalic, and tall. The Hittites, a dark complexioned race, probably of Mongoloid type. For the Lord hath caused the army of the Armenians to hear a sound of chariots and a sound of horses, even the sound of a great army, so that they said to one another, Behold, the king of Israel has hired against us the kings of the Hittites and the kings of the Egyptians to come upon us. So these are these nations coming against Israel. It says the Amorites were blondes and dolichocephalic. Now, the head shape for Israel is dolichocephalic. So I don't know, but the blonde thing is probably close to the angel thing. And then the Hittites, a dark complexion race. That's kind of interesting. Because even if you look at the Australians, they look like they're a dark complexioned fallen angel seed. Even though they're black like midnight, they've got that very Neanderthal bone structure. Oh yes, I wanted to add this. There's an ancient tradition among the Germanics, and they would go and get the Sabian women, and they would go and get the Jewish women. And according to this tradition, a German unit, the Vangioni, who fought with the Roman legions in Palestine, had chosen from the vast horde of Jewish prisoners the most beautiful women and had brought them back to their stations on the shores of the Rhine and the Main and had compelled them to minister to the satisfaction of their desires. The children thus begotten of the Jewish and German parents were brought up by their mothers in the Jewish faith, their fathers not troubling themselves about them. It is these children who are said to have been the founders of the first Jewish communities between Worms and Mayence. Okay, so that's from the 13th tribe.
Now, this is not the brothers on my channel. Let me be very careful. Now, I'm not talking about the brothers who come to my channel. I'm not talking about the brothers who support me. I'm not talking about the brothers who support black women, who support all of the female teachers out there. For all the brothers out there who are like, oh yeah, we can go with white Gentile women, and we can go with Egyptian women, and we can go with all these different women. The white man done took your woman, told her she was worthless, raped her, told you she was worthless, but took her anyway, and is running the White House with her. Has been running the White House with her since America began, and is using her to run all of the corporations in America because she's worth so little. And those brothers who don't value black women and say, oh, we can marry white, we can be with white women and we can be with Egyptian women and all of this kind of foolishness, the white man knows the value of your woman. You don't. She's running Babylon for him. He took her as his wife, told you she was worthless, and you believed him. But she's powering the planet. Talk about a dupe. Talk about these brothers who are running around saying stuff like, oh, it didn't matter. The women of Israel weren't necessarily, of the line of Shem. They were maybe Canaanites and no. And I'm going to have to sneak it into a study because nobody will watch a plain outright video about the sisters and what their value is according to Yah. So I have to sneak it in. I have to put it in between a piece of, big fluffy bread so someone will eat it. But I'm going to show you the genealogy of the women of Israel comes directly from Enoch, not Canaan. I know brothers want to sleep with Canaanite women, whoring after women, and they're responsible for that whore mentality for losing the kingdom consequently, and Yah blames them. But I'm going to show you that the women of Israel are of the seed of Enoch. And that's why it says the seed of the woman is at war with the seed of the enemy. Okay? So, yeah, run after all those women while the white man chases your woman to run the world. And there's all the compliant sisters of the world who are, oh, we're okay with polygamy. And yeah, you can rape my daughter and we'll just tell her she's fast. And yes, Sarah and Leah and Rachel handed their concubines over to their husband. So there's a wicked spirit in the women of Israel as well that goes for polygamy and thinks if you're gentle and soft and patient and you tolerate rape and wickedness and the rape of your children and you call your daughters fast because you just want to have a man, you just want to agree with the man and not with Yah. Agree with Yah. Okay? You're part of the problem. And now this is not the brothers on my channel. Let me be very careful. Now I'm not talking about the brothers who come to my channel. I'm not talking about the brothers who support me. I'm not talking about the brothers who support black women, who support all of the female teachers out there. Because I hate to say it, family, but the breeding farms and the castration and the eunuchs, the uniques, the unique ones, the eunuchs, was a consequence of that desire to sleep with every woman on the planet. And the reason why Judah was lifted up as the tribal leader was because after he slept with his daughter-in-law, even though her husbands had died, so she was purified, he abstained. He abstained and never was with another woman again. He became a eunuch, unique. He decided to control with his mind and spirit and not want to run around and sleep with every woman and tell his family they could do that. And of course, Levi from the beginning, praise Yah for my father Levi, hallelujah Levi, chose a woman of the daughters of Haran from the beginning and did not multiply wives because he was a priest. And that's what priests are commanded to do. I'm not trying to sound bitter, you guys. These are facts. How you can miss this in scripture, I don't know.
The KKK origins are not just from, Japheth, for example. They were coming from the fallen angels, and they're coming from Esau Edom, who was originally black, okay? And he's mixed in with everyone else, but he's still got his black players in the game. In Britain in October of 1865 in Pulaski, Albert Pike and Nathan Bedford was chosen or hired by a Rothschild agent, a man by the name of Judah Philip Benjamin, who was also a pedophile, to create the KKK. This is the Rothschilds family, okay? Judah Philip Benjamin was the Secretary of State in war for the Confederacy. It was in Nashville that Albert Pike and other Confederate generals met in 1867 to form a Southern statewide terrorist KKK, expanding the little project they had started 2 years before in Pulaski, Tennessee. He was then given Rothschild money to create it out of the annals of both the Khazarian Mafia in the Knights of the Golden Circle. Okay, both the Khazarian Mafia and, it should say, and the Knights of the Golden Circle. The organization he formed in Nashville designated Pike its chief judiciary officer and its golden dragon for Arkansas. And it was a few months after the end of the Civil War that had began on the 12th of April, 1861. So there was a direct correlation and need to create that for once the war ended or to bring about the end of the war. Who knows? And then it says also in August 1871, Albert Pike wrote a letter to an Italian Illuminati member by the name of Giuseppe Mazzini, where he predicted World War III. Why? Because Esau lives by the sword. So they plan wars. And so this is just an indicator of where we are right now and the things that are going down right now.
These guys were known to be Jews. Okay? Judah ben Israel was known to be a Jew. Okay? And you see he's mixed race. So, and they were also Eastern European. So this is how Russia ties in. So we're going to get more into these white and black bloodlines of the Russians in part two of this, which I'll post later on this week. It's just gotten to be really long, and of course I'll go into the Belarus, the white Russians, the Ukrainians, who are the Polish, the Ashkenazis, the Ukrainians. They're all the same people, exact same genetics, everything. Suba, Aleph, Yasharel, Yahweh. And may the Ruach HaKodesh lead you into all truth and show you things to come.
I'm giving recognition to the Most High Yahuwah. I'm giving thanks and praises for the many blessings I receive from His favor.